Betrayal doesn't crash through the door. It knocks gently. It smiles. It listens. It nods in agreement. It acts like it's on your side. And then, just when your guard is down, when you think you're safe, it strikes. Machiavelli understood this better than most. He didn't just observe betrayal, he studied it like an autopsy. He knew how it slipped through power structures like poison in a goblet of wine, unnoticed until it is far too late. But here's the core truth he uncovered: people don't get betrayed because they're weak. They get betrayed because they ignore the signs. The signs are always there: subtle changes in tone, in behavior, in energy. But most people aren't trained to see them. They chalk them up to stress, mood swings, off days. Machiavelli's work, especially The Prince and Discourses, wasn't written for people who want to feel safe. It was written for those who want to stay powerful. And if you want to stay powerful, you need to sharpen your instincts, because betrayal doesn't come from your enemies. It comes from those closest to you. Your team, your partner, your confidant. In this video, we're going deep into Machiavelli's most precise insights, the real signs of betrayal. Not theories, not surface-level psychology, but patterns observed in politics, alliances, friendships, and families. Let's talk about the first one. Machiavelli called it shadow obedience. It's the kind of loyalty that's all performance and no substance. In The Prince, he warned rulers that after conquering a region or absorbing a rival, the people who now serve you might obey, but only because they have no choice yet. He wrote, "The injury must be done all at once, lest he recover the ability to retaliate." In other words, silence is not peace. Compliance is not agreement. Think about this. Someone who used to challenge you offer their thoughts. Disagree when necessary, but now they just nod. They agree with everything. They don't offer new ideas. They seem supportive. But something's missing. That's not loyalty. That's patience. They're waiting. Machiavelli saw this firsthand in how Cesare Borgia ruled Romania. After taking power, Cesare installed a brutal governor to do the dirty work, crack down, instill fear. And when the people were ready to rebel, Cesare publicly executed the governor, earning their trust by appearing as the hero. That was calculated. That was strategy. Here's the lesson: people fear cunning more than cruelty. The most dangerous traitors want to argue with you. They'll wait for their chance to replace you. You've seen this in real life. The colleague who always agrees in meetings but never speaks up first. The friend who used to challenge your thinking, but now just says, "You're right." The partner who stopped offering feedback, who just smiles and goes along with everything. That's not peace. That's positioning. Let's move to the second sign: over-communication without clarity. This one's tricky. You might think betrayal comes from silence, but often it's the opposite. In Discourses, Machiavelli explained how conspirators and traitors don't stay quiet. They flatter, they praise, they're loud, but they never say anything real. He wrote, "Men are less careful how they offend one who makes himself loved than one who makes himself feared. For love is preserved by the link of obligation, which, owing to the baseness of men, is broken whenever it is seen to conflict with self-interest." Translation: people stay loyal only until it costs them, and when they're preparing to switch sides, they'll overcompensate. They'll text you more. They'll compliment your leadership. They'll echo your ideas, but they'll never show where they actually stand. No tension, no disagreement, no friction, just this polished, empty alignment. You'll feel it if you're paying attention. Something about their communication feels too smooth, too curated. And Machiavelli's warning: Don't confuse closeness for loyalty. In fact, the closer someone is to you, the more dangerous they can be. Because your enemies don't know where you sleep. Your enemies don't know what you fear. The people closest to you do. So in The Prince, Machiavelli advises rulers to keep power dispersed. Never let anyone, advisor, friend, or soldier become too powerful, too familiar. Because the moment they think they're irreplaceable, they'll start calculating. Think about this in modern terms. The co-founder who praises all your ideas but hasn't contributed anything new in weeks, the friend. Who texts you every day but dodges any serious conversation, the employee who flatters you. Constantly but always leaves details vague. These aren't signs of respect, they're signs of withdrawal in disguise. And finally, the third sign, misaligned evolution. This one's the hardest to catch because it wears the costume of growth. You see someone around you changing, evolving, leveling up at first. It looks good, you think. They're just doing their thing. But Machiavelli noticed something dangerous. Betrayal doesn't always come from anger or resentment. Sometimes it comes from divergence. In discourses, he studied how political alliances often fall apart, not because of arguments, but because one side changed direction, and no one noticed. When two people once shared a vision, but now one's growing in a completely different direction without communication. Loyalty quietly turns into competition, and this is where betrayal becomes structural. Not emotional. It's not about hate. It's about momentum going separate ways. And instead of bringing it up, they stay silent. They keep smiling. But behind the scenes, they're building a future that no longer includes you. This is how relationships, teams, even nations fall not through loud conflict, but through subtle misalignment. So pay attention. Who's around you, growing quickly but in ways that don't intersect with your path anymore? Who's suddenly ambitious, but vague? Who's building something, but never talks about how you fit in? That's not distance, that's drift. Drift is where betrayal begins. Because power doesn't just vanish, it erodes, slowly. And betrayal isn't a single moment, it's a series of ignored signals. Machiavelli wasn't a paranoid man. He didn't advocate fear, he advocated observation, pattern recognition. He trained leaders to see the invisible before it became catastrophic. Most people wait until betrayal is undeniable, until someone stabs them in the back, steals the opportunity, crosses the line. But Machiavelli would shake his head and say, if you wait until the betrayal is visible to act you, they're already lost. Let us dive deeper into what Machiavelli meant when he warned rulers not to wait for a betrayal to reveal itself. Because by then, it's no longer a threat. It's damage. Take shadow obedience, the first sign we talked about. The one where someone used to challenge you, offer ideas, push back, but now they just echo. But it's a trap. Machiavelli knew from observing courts and rulers that when someone stops being difficult, it usually doesn't mean they've become loyal. It means they're planning something. They're agreeable. Too agreeable. This feels like support. It feels like peace. When disagreement vanishes overnight, it's not a shift in values. It's a strategy. He saw that this kind of sudden harmony wasn't genuine, it was calculated. Shake things up. Announce a pivot in direction. Add pressure. And then watch. Maybe they'll raise questions. Maybe they'll push back. But it will come from sincerity. But true loyalty, the kind that stays, even when things get messy. So what do? You don't confront, you test. In The Prince, he advised rulers to introduce sudden changes. But betrayal is always riskless. They just orbit, float, observe. You give them a task, not a small one. A real responsibility, where there's actual cost. And then you watch. Because if someone is truly aligned with your cause, they'll adapt. They're everywhere. The ones who stay close, show up all the time, compliment your every move but never commit to anything specific. What he meant was people show you what they care about when you threaten what they value. But if they've just been mirroring you playing a role, they'll flinch. They'll hesitate. Their mask slips. Their script breaks. They're either not with you or already halfway out the door. It's the friend who's suddenly laser-focused on a new vision. The colleague building something exciting, but somehow you are no longer part of the conversation. This is how you flush out shadow obedience. You create discomfort that demands real alignment. Not fake agreement. Not blind repetition. Now, go back to the second sign, over-communication without clarity. In his letters, he wrote about people who faked closeness to gather information, not out of loyalty, but out of self-interest. It's one of the most common disguises used by traitors, especially in modern leadership and teams. He called it silent ambition when someone starts evolving on a private track, separate from yours. Without announcing it, Machiavelli saw men rise from loyal allies to quiet threats simply because their growth was no longer aligned. You say, "This is where I'm headed, are you still with me?" Machiavelli recognized this centuries ago in the behavior of diplomats, advisors, and court insiders. And the key way to spot them: they never take risks. Even after seeing these signs, shadow obedience, over-communication, misaligned growth, they do nothing. They're still present, still smiling, but they use different language now. Are they still building something with you or just next to you? We hope it's not what it looks like. They talk about their goals, not your shared vision. Because real loyalty has teeth. It shows up in disagreement, in initiative, in vulnerability. So how do you expose that kind of empty loyalty? Put them in a position where they have to step up. Do they move? Or do they stall? Do they lean in or disappear? Machiavelli once wrote, "A man will sooner forget the death of his father than the loss of his inheritance. If someone keeps avoiding responsibility, keeps dodging commitment, that's your answer." Now let's revisit the third sign, misaligned evolution. This one is dangerous because it doesn't look like betrayal. It looks like growth. You might tell yourself, they're just growing. It's not personal, but Machiavelli warned about this exact scenario. At first, there's no obvious conflict. But something starts to feel off. And acting so decisively, so silently, that they never even get to make the move. And if you ignore that shift, if you pretend it as harmless, you'll eventually find that you're standing next to someone who no longer considers you part of their plan. This happened again and again in Florentine politics. The betrayal wasn't explosive. It was quiet. And the signs were there all along. So how do you detect it early? You listen. Not just to what they say, but how they say it. Are they still speaking your language? Are they using we? Or has it quietly turned into I? For the same boldness may be used against himself. When you feel that drift, you don't panic. You test. You bring the shared vision back to the center. And then, you don't focus on their words. You feel their energy. Does it lock in? Or does it hesitate? The person who jumped ship from someone else and landed at your side. They flatter. They call it a second chance. They act grateful. The ones who know your patterns, your fears, your blind spots. That hesitation, that's a crack. and every crack ignored becomes a break. But here's where most people fail. And the moment your grip slips, he's gone. Why? Because betrayal feels personal. And when something feels personal, we hesitate. We remember good times. We make excuses. But Machiavelli didn't play that game. He wasn't sentimental. He wasn't emotional. He was surgical. He famously wrote, "Men must be either crushed or annihilated," which sounds brutal, but here's what it really means. There is no room for maybe in loyalty. If someone is hesitating, posturing, drifting, and you let it continue, you are creating the perfect environment for betrayal. So what do? You don't react with rage. You don't confront. You don't plead. You don't accuse. You restructure. You remove their access quietly. You change the dynamics of the room. You give them fewer openings. You stop trusting their words and start watching their moves. Because that's the Machiavellian way. Not cruelty, clarity. The most powerful move isn't punishing a traitor after the fact. It's seeing a betrayal before they realize, They still have the knife, but now, they're no longer in position to use it. This is the difference between being destroyed and staying in control. Because power isn't about being strong. It's about being one step ahead. You think loyalty means time spent together. Shared history, secrets, laughs. Machiavelli would laugh at that. He wrote that the most dangerous people are not strangers, they're the ones who've been beside you the longest. He said, a wise prince ought to be cautious in accepting the services of those who have shown themselves bold in offending others. In modern terms, if someone betrayed another to get close to you, they'll betray you too when someone stronger shows up. Which brings us to a fourth, rarely spoken sign: loyalty without roots. You've seen this type. But Machiavelli would warn you, watch that man closely. He's not loyal to you. He's loyal to the momentum. In The Prince, Machiavelli warned about mercenaries, soldiers who fight for pay, not loyalty. Princes who relied on them always fell. Why? Because mercenaries don't fight for the cause. They fight for the reward. And the moment the danger outweighs the benefit, they vanish. Today's mercenaries don't carry swords, they carry charm. They know your language. They blend in perfectly, but they're only there while you're winning. So how do you deal with these modern-day mercenaries? The ones who joined you not because they believe in your mission, but because it was convenient at the time. Machiavelli gives us a simple method: study their history, not their words. Ask yourself, how did they arrive at your side? Was it because they truly aligned with your vision? Or because they were rejected by someone else? Did they help build the foundation? Or did they show up after you were already successful? Because here's the harsh truth: the person who only joins once you're winning will be the first to flee when you start losing. Real loyalty isn't about proximity. It's about cost. Machiavelli makes it brutally clear: he who is not willing to suffer for your gain will never suffer to defend your loss. So, you test privately, smartly. Introduce small inconveniences, create minor challenges, make the situation just uncomfortable enough to see who still shows up. Watch who leans in, and who starts backing out. Watch who stays active when the rewards aren't obvious. Watch who fights for you not with words, but with effort. That's your real circle. Not the loudest supporters, the most consistent ones. Now let's break another myth, one that destroys powerful people over and over again. The idea that good intentions protect you from betrayal. They don't. Machiavelli was crystal clear about this. He saw leaders, generals, businessmen fall not because they lacked strength, but because they trusted morality to be a shield. They thought kindness would earn them loyalty. They thought shared values would keep people around. But he wrote, "Men are ungrateful, fickle, liars and deceivers. Not because people are evil, but because loyalty follows interest, and when interest changes so does loyalty. Someone can love you, cry with you, laugh with you, and still betray you, not because they hate you, but because something better came along. You are not protected by how much they like you. You are only safe if betraying you doesn't benefit them." That's why Machiavelli didn't build relationships around affection. He built systems, pressure, points, leverage. He believed every ruler, every leader, every person in a position of power must build a structure around them where loyalty isn't optional. It's the smartest move people can make. And when you detect those first signs, shadow obedience over communication without clarity, misaligned evolution loyalty without roots, you don't wait, you move. You don't get angry, you don't explain, you don't argue, you restructure. In The Prince, he tells the story of Agathocles of Syracuse, who rose from humble beginnings to absolute power, and when his generals grew too familiar, too comfortable, too equal, he removed them, not out of emotion, out of necessity, because comfort breeds entitlement, and entitlement breeds betrayal. Now, let's bring this to your world. You don't have to eliminate anyone. You isolate. You reduce their access. You redistribute responsibilities. You break monopolies of influence. You shine light into corners where shadows used to operate. Not to humiliate, to neutralize. Because Machiavelli's most powerful teaching is this: betrayal will happen, but it doesn't have to. Work, let them plan, let them whisper, let them try. But if your structure is solid, if your team is tested, if your power isn't based on feelings but on design, then their betrayal will be like a knife against steel. It won't cut, it'll snap. And yet, most people miss the moment. They feel it. The shift. That one strange hesitation. That odd energy. That changed tone. Their instinct sounds the alarm, but they silence it. They say, "It's probably nothing. They're just tired. We've been through too much for this to mean anything." But that's where betrayal starts in your silence. Machiavelli had no patience for that. He believed ignoring threats for emotional comfort was weakness. He wanted leaders to observe, to unsettle, to test constantly. Because power isn't guarded by affection, it's guarded by anticipation. One of his most famous quotes hits hardest: "A wise prince should not keep faith when doing so would be against his interest." On the surface, it sounds cold, ruthless, but look closer. Machiavelli isn't glorifying betrayal. He's acknowledging that faith, trust, and loyalty are circumstantial. The moment someone's interest shifts far enough, even the most loyal person may flip. So he offers a solution into steps. 1. Detect the shift early. 2. Make betrayal more painful than loyalty. And here's how you do that in real life. Let's say someone close to you shows signs. They stop taking initiative. They're overly polished in how they communicate. They say all the right things but offer nothing real. What do? You don't say, "Hey, are we okay?" That gives them too much ground. That makes you vulnerable. Instead, you shift the game, change how decisions are made, limit access, introduce friction, tighten control over what they can touch, influence or use. You create a structure where staying loyal earns them more and betraying you costs them everything. Not because you're being petty, because you're being strategic. In Machiavelli's world, betrayal wasn't personal, it was mechanical. If your system allows it, it will happen. If your system punishes it, it disappears. That's why Machiavelli admired leaders like Ferdinand of Aragon, who never let one advisor or ally become too powerful. He rotated alliances, kept people guessing, and never allowed a single group to control too much for too long. This wasn't paranoia, it was structural awareness, real-world example. If you run a business, don't let one person own all your passwords. If you lead a team, don't let one star player control all communication. If you're in a relationship, don't let one person hold all emotional leverage. Always build redundancy. Always build independence into your power. And always test, because betrayal always shows itself. Before it happens, you'll feel the praise become excessive. You'll see the initiative slow down. You'll notice how transparency vanishes. You'll sense that something's being built, but not shared. And that's when Machiavelli would tell to observe, quietly, don't act yet. Let the betrayer keep revealing themselves. Let their ego overextend. Let them grow confident. Because a threat is most vulnerable when it thinks it's invisible. In The Prince, Machiavelli tells the story of Cesare Borgia, again not confronting betrayal the moment it appeared, but allowing it to fully unfold. So when he struck, it was permanent. His message: exposure without execution only makes the traitor smarter. So what do? You remove their leverage. You shift the environment. You cut them off from the power they once used against you before they even realize what is happening. This is preemptive exile, not war, not conflict, just irrelevance. And sometimes you do need to make an example, but only when it's public, undeniable, and dangerous. Strike so cleanly, so visibly, that no one else ever thinks about trying the same thing. In that case, Machiavelli says, don't hesitate, because power doesn't just protect itself. Sometimes it must echo, and once it's done, erase the past. No lingering conversations. No half-burned bridges. No stories that give the betrayer relevance. Machiavelli said in Taking a State, the conqueror must do all injuries at once. Why? Because the longer a traitor's name stays alive, even in memory, the more others start to wonder, could they do the same? But when a betrayer disappears completely, not just from your world, but from everyone else's, that silence becomes your shield.